Morning. That is, bitches. What's up, cracker?
Good to see you in your blueness and your slick back hair, and your attitude.
Thank you. Good to be seen by you.
We're both taking a drink of that thing that you can't drink enough of.
That's right. Not for this show.
Wow. That's some strong lemon ginger tea.
Ugh. Yes. I ask for crack cocaine and you give me ginger tea.
I didn't hear the ask for crack cocaine. I wouldn't even know where to get that. Does it even exist? Does anyone do crack anymore? I don't think they do.
Oh, I'm sure it's alive and well. Just like
Nah, they've all graduated to fentanyl.
no, every drug that exists is being used by somebody. There's no drug on the shelf just begging for users. Please use me. There's someone that's there.
I, I,
Taking it
I
in.
kind of had this strange fantasy to see like a documentary of someone taking all of them all at once just to see what would happen if they took cocaine, weed, marijuana, fentanyl, heroin, speed, LSD, like all at once, like within like 5 minutes,
They
just to
were
see.
hooked up to a heart monitor. There would be a flat line.
Well, not at first.
Yeah, it would spike egregiously and then flatten. Um, you heard about Sid and my drug off, right? Back in high school days.
No, I did not hear about this. Are you sure you want to tell me about this?
Well, just tell you the Reader's Digest version, and if you want more details, could give it to you. The Reader's Digest version is Sid and I had this great idea to do a drug off, and he had this book on legal drugs. So, like soaking morning poppy seeds, nutmeg, smoking nutmeg, all sorts of chaos. And the parameters were that we would each choose something and then we'd both take it, and then it'd be the next person's turn. And the one who dropped off first lost.
Ow.
Yeah. So
So did
12
anyone go to the
goes,
ER?
what?
Did anyone go to the ER?
Probably should have. I recall being in the back seat of someone's car. I don't know who it is. And Sid's going, oh, my heart hurts. My heart hurts. And I'm just going, oh, this is so bad. And then I'm in bed and the bed is flipping head to foot. I'm like I've heard of turning, like this, but I
Spins?
was turning like this. Not, it was bad. And my heart hurt too.
So this is where we insert the obligatory children. This is not a recommendation or an advocacy of any kind of drug use.
It was stupid with a capital S.
Yeah, I never did anything that wild. I had my wild times, but not that. And
Well,
strangely, you're both still alive.
I know.
That's awful.
I would like to blame my current condition on my past.
How's that working out for you?
It sucks. Oh, it's working out great. I'm taking no responsibility for what is and just angry at everyone from my past. It's brilliant. It's working out great.
Are you telling them, or are you just quietly smoldering?
I don't know if quietly, but I'm not telling them. Yeah, that's what I should do. I should
Is it
start.
really anger if you don't tell anyone?
Yeah, it is. This is the Greg Wilker 12-step program. Okay, call everyone up you're angry with and tell them to fuck off and why.
I don't see that in the ACIM book here.
No, that's lesson number 367.
So I finally got to the part where the lesson 56 is review. Like there's a whole section of review. So it's not like we stopped at lesson 50 and it's actually lesson 55, 56. They're all reviewing pieces of it. So it's a legitimate thing. It's not like she's doing some crazy thing. For those of you who don't know what ACIM is, I'm currently taking a course in miracles, and Greg's a graduate.
We're all graduates. That's what you find out at the end.
Oh, so you're telling me I don't need to read this huge book?
That's what
Okay.
I'm saying.
Well,
Are
it's
you
fun to
reading
read.
it?
I'm going to keep reading it because I'm enjoying reading it. And
Yeah, pretty mind blowing, isn't it?
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
It really turns everything on its end, and it's like, wow.
You know, one of the things I learned from you about this was that there's this use of the word saving or savior,
Right.
and we had a conversation about it this week in our call, and it was like, well, I prefer to, because it's a little problematic on some level, and so I said, well, I prefer the word healing, and I didn't attribute that to you, but that's who I got it from, is healing as opposed to savior.
Healer.
Indeed.
I don't want who bends a bat at me. Speaking of healers.
Man.
I'm stoked that you like our opener.
Yeah, I hope everybody else is liking it. If you do, send an email to marc@markwentcoaching.com. marc@markwentcoaching.com.
We're almost, I think, let me take a look at the calendar here. So,
Is this meta? You're talking about releasing the thing while on the show. We're talking about releasing the show.
I know I was thinking about that this morning because there's a podcast I listened to called The Get Up, and they took a Friday off. And so they were saying, like, this is pre-recorded and we're off today, but we'll always have new content for you. I was like, well, it's not really fucking new if you recorded it Wednesday, is it? I kind of had this,
For all you know, there could have been a pandemic or someone dropped the bomb.
right.
You're talking about all the sunshine and sunflowers, and meanwhile, 500,000 people have died in a horrible wreck.
Right. So I don't really think that I want to give away the fact that we've pre-recorded 6 episodes before going live, and what you're listening to was probably recorded in June. And fuck you for having an attitude about it. Fuck you.
Well, that's a great way to keep people tuned in, Greg. For those of you who are part of our anger management class, please stick around.
Led by none other than the Trump administration.
They aren't an administration anymore, thank God.
They are an administration. There is a
I'd like to administer something to them.
yeah, I think a lot of people would. God, I just still see people. I really truly do not understand how anyone can support that gentleman intelligently. Like, what is it based on? I get the knee-jerk response. Well, fucking Democrats are all thieves and liars, and DC has been crooked since day one, and like this anger thing. But an intelligent conversation in support of that gentleman as a president and leader, I don't see it.
Well, I've had a couple.
Intelligent conversation.
Yes, in fact, more than a couple. One in particular that I'm thinking of was a person was on the streets of the town where I live, and they had a booth open, and they had all these very provocative signs and all this literature, and they were basically there to promote Lyndon LaRouche, who's a whole other character. But they were taking the position that Trump was being persecuted and was the savior of the country and those sorts of things. And being the type of person I am, I'm curious because I have this sense of human nature that anyone who has this point of view about someone really believes it in their whole heart. And if that's true, there must be something there for me to learn. So I'm sort of hanging around, and I'm seeing other people who I would consider my party members. I'm a Democrat. I'm a registered Democrat, coming up and like being aggro with these people. And I'm like, well, that's not how I want to show up for sure. I'm trying to like, well, what's the middle path, right? Buddhism, what's the middle way, right? And I'm sort of saying, well, but we all kind of want the same things, don't we? And so why are you guys vilifying Democrats? And like, I wasn't confronting the Democrats who were giving shit to the Trump supporters. That was just sort of a foregone conclusion. I was just there to sort of see where the cracks were and how might I get in the conversation. And then, of course, I wanted to try to insert a little bit of my own ideas that might create an opening for anyone I was speaking to about another possibility beyond what I internally was seeing as kind of a myopic point of view. Anyway, I ran into this mom. Myopic means only like can only see this
No,
much,
no, okay.
right? So there's this amazingly beautiful woman there. Like, just imagine a blonde woman that's like the most gorgeous,
No.
right? And she's got two kids with her that are like 7 and 8 or something like that. And she is definitely a Trump supporter. And she's like, kind of not raving, but she's very passionate, right? And I said to her, I said, well, hey, you're railing on the Democrats and the Democrats are railing on you, but like we're Americans first. It's not like the Democrats are the enemy and you're talking like we're trying to crush the country or we're trying to kill the country. And we ended up having this really great conversation. And about midway through, she said, well, you're not like them. You're not like the others.
One of these things is not like the others.
And I said, well, besides my brilliance and my individuality, the truth is that's how it is for everybody. The reality is that we project our judgment onto people based on this label that we give them, and we miss all this amazing nuanced humanity about them. And that if we just sat down and tried not to pillory each other or criticize each other or make each other wrong for 10 minutes, we might actually find out that we both want the safe space for our kids. We want safe streets. We want education. We don't want the government spending too much money that it doesn't have because of that affects our taxes. We don't really want to be running around making war. Like, I was so shocked. She made a really strong case about how she wanted to bring the troops home from Afghanistan because, honestly, Trump had started that process already.
Yeah, that was
right?
one of the positives that he did. Yep.
And so now I'm just reminded that there's this machine and it has this vested interest in creating this sense of the Super Bowl of politics every couple of years because it drives so much money to advertising and to media outlets, and they get us all fomenting against each other. Meanwhile, we're blinded to things like how our water isn't clean anymore and how they're pumping aquifers empty so that Coca-Cola can sell water back to us. They're not in the water business, they're in the plastic business. So anyway, before I go off on a long rant, it's just amazing how little difference there really is between us when we start to open up the possibility of our humanity. Now, is that funny?
Phone
It
number?
can be.
Did you get her phone number?
No, she was married with kids. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that'd be
We did follow each other on Instagram.
all right.
Yeah, so we exchanged a few messages here and there, and the dialogue stayed civil. And she said a couple, like I would get in her Insta and make kind of things that would like kind of put a little chink in the way that they viewed things, and then she would get a little pissed. I could feel her getting pissed, and then I would say, "Yeah, but I'm not like all the others."
Are. You know what they say? The devil's greatest achievement was to get people to believe he doesn't exist.
Hmm. Yeah, well, we could get very deeply spiritual about this for a second if you want.
Oh no, it sounds like a waste of time.
It's not likely to be very funny.
Here's the thing, like with Trump, I just recall the chaos on the Capitol, and Trump and his son and a few supporters sitting in this media tent watching the TV cameras and cheering it on and celebrating. Right, exactly. And there's no, I cannot think of any intelligent support for what I saw. Let alone just the stoking the fires of racism and hatred and just, being a battering ram for chaos. Just,
I,
and again, like when he was doing his thing to be president the first time, and there he is in this huge crowd, like imitating a reporter who has a handicap, like that. Like that's not leadership.
oh, I totally agree. But I will say this for the Capitol riots: the Trump supporters did what the hippies and several other groups have been wishing they could do for decades.
Yes,
They blew down the
that is
doors.
true. And again, juxtaposing images I've seen of the Black Lives Matter march that went in front of the Capitol, and there's military personnel on 3 tiers of steps in front of the Capitol. And then there's these fucking whiteys storming the Capitol, and there's no one, they're in fucking side the building. So there's a lot of dysfunction. And it's kind of like the 9/11 thing. There's things that I see where I'm like, wow, that, there's some discrepancy there that I understand looking at it, but it's also a fucking rabbit hole that right now my priorities are housing for my children. That's more of an immediate concern for my energy than the chaos of January 6th and 9/11 and all these sort of rabbit holes of
Well,
concern.
again, it's designed to drive our attention management.
I like your Super Bowl analogy of the
Yeah.
political thing. And what would be brilliant is if we approached it like a Super Bowl. We just realize it really doesn't affect our actual life. It's just something to get caught up in and put a lot of energy into. Have a halftime show, where Bruce Springsteen and Pearl Jam do a halftime. Yeah.
Yeah, well, freedom's a weird thing. It leaves us vulnerable to all sorts of manipulation, right?
Well, I heard freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose.
Right. And think about it for a minute. One of the reasons there's so much chaos here in the US is that we have some liberty, and we try to hold the space for the possibility that people can figure it out for themselves. And what that means is we end up with some weird shit, like the whole the insurrection at the Capitol, the Rosh Niche thing, like, Jim Jones, although that happened outside the country eventually, but it's
It
this
was
idea.
definitely a USA made thing. Jim Jones was made in the US and then
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. But then you have the Epstein thing too, like Jeffrey Epstein and all this real deep chaos.
Well, behind the scenes of the fomenting of the Super Bowl of politics and this kind of divisory kind of contexts is this battle for control of the economic sphere. And we allow that freedom too. Like, we're like, yeah, if you can make it happen, you can take the money.
For those of you listening,
I just whacked my
just
microphone.
slapped the fuck out of his microphone.
They probably heard it. They probably pulled their earbuds out really quickly. Anyway, but the point being, there's this.
Assuming that everyone's got earbuds. I don't have earbuds.
Whatever.
Oh, a typical white response. Whatever. Don't call me on my shit.
There's a reason the packaging for earbuds is white.
Look, I am standing on my privilege and I need this right now. I need my privilege and my glass of white wine.
Anyway, we're trying to have a serious discussion about the liabilities of liberty. right?
Liabilities of liberty. I like that.
Yeah, because when you allow people to have capitalism or have to do what they can concentrate all kinds of power in the media and all these crazy places, and then they start figuring out they can push our buttons, our intellectual buttons, and they get us all fomenting against each other, and suddenly this whole brilliant idea of efficiency and people having all the things that they need, which is essentially our true human legacy, become subject to the machinations of this kind of manipulative thing where people get convinced through fear and through feeling less than that they should be buying this product or subscribing to this political belief or going to this church. It's like at the end of the day, freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose.
Exactly. And that's good enough for me. Me and Bobby McGee. Um, I had this interesting conversation with a mutual friend of ours, and I don't think he'd mind being mentioned, but I'm not going to. So there you go.
What's the
Anyway,
code word for him?
I don't have one. I was going to say something crass, but
What,
here.
you can't be crass on this show? Why are we doing it then? No, go ahead.
Do you believe that life is infinite?
Well, yes, and as soon as you start deciding what life is, you start to get into a semantic argument about whether you can support that
Yeah,
position.
but is that a yes, but answer?
What do I believe?
Do you believe life
Yes.
is infinite? Okay. Do you believe evil is infinite?
I don't believe in evil.
Okay.
I don't believe in the devil or evil.
All right.
Is that where the conversation ends?
So,
I
well,
hope not.
I think that it leaves me with okay, life is infinite,
Uh-huh.
nothing else exists. So therein lies the peace of God.
Sure. Like
You
I,
know,
I
like
think the term evil actually points to something that's useful in terms of having a conversation, but it ends up being a trap. We get into this whole judge good versus evil kind of thing. And again, it's another polarization designed to manipulate us.
right, that's where I think ultimately we are in a process of evolution of consciousness to a realization that life is infinite and we are a part of life. And that's all there is. And life is love.
Yeah. It's more than that, but you know,
It's also 12 dozen eggs and a cup of flour, a little bit of vanilla extract, oven set at 450 degrees, and we're back in World War II all of a sudden. What the shit? Where did this go?
well, what I was going to get to is you can't see the you can't use the term life without the term death. You can't use the term
Well, actually, you can't.
love without hate. They're on a spectrum.
That's so funny. Speaking of our one of our favorite mutual musicians, Marilyn Manson.
Your favorite. I think he's just a hack in a costume.
Oh my God. I was listening to the bootleg I have of a San Francisco show. And there's this one section where he's got the whole crowd chanting, "We hate love. We love hate." And it's just like the whole crowd. I was like, holy fuck, like, what a thing to create
Well,
in
it's
a
I my
crowd
respect for him
mentality.
just went way up. Like I had what the dichotomy of that is just so brilliant.
That's what like this I should share this bootleg show with you because if you're ever in a place where I think you described it best last week, there was like some energy. It's just pure raw shadow energy. And if you're ever in the mood for that, um, it's perfect. And there's this one song that's kind of a ballad where he just really captures that hopelessness of shadow, that, yeah, it's fucking heartbreaking, you know. um, the speed of pain. Oh, it's so good.
Well, once again, you're opening my artistic eyes, which you've done several times in our life.
For those of you who don't have a video, yeah,
Since we're not broadcasting in video, that means everyone.
wow, then. At least we're all one. We're all
Tell you
one in
what,
our blindness.
tell you what, go watch Clockwork Orange and then email me, markwentcoaching@gmail.com.
You're just gonna keep hammering on
I just got an email.
markwentcoaching.com, aren't you?
Oh, it's not from them. Well, no, I gave a different email first.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. And if
Okay.
you're listening to this, now you're perplexed. You're going to have to go back and see if you can find it. You're going to end up listening to the whole show over again, and you will have fallen into my evil plans.
Oh, dear God. Is there no hope for humanity? Hey, did you hear? It's announced the white rhino is officially extinct.
I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, there's two females left, but the male passed away. And so that's it. There is no more white rhino. And I think I saw they believe its lifespan was 50 million years, like it's lived through an ice age and a couple other things, you know, plate tectonic separation and all sorts of chaos. And the one thing it could not survive is human beings.
Right. Well, a different rhino could copulate with one of them, and there's a 50-50 chance that a white rhino would happen again.
Well, they've attempted fertilizing the females when this rhino was alive, and it just didn't happen. And I guess now they're past the age of.
Well, it's this chicken and egg thing. Like, I get the magnitude of what you're saying. Like, if that's not lost on me, we are what people call an extinction event is going on around us, right? But nature, God, that thing, that magic thing created white rhinos, right? They still exist in some form. And it's possible that they could regenerate themselves.
You know what song just popped into my head?
Yeah.
Don't be afraid, you're already dead. Don't be afraid, you're already dead.
So comforting.
Oh, God help us.
He is.
She
It's
is.
us that we need to help us. She is. All right. Fine. It
They
is.
are.
They are.
We have all been here before. Yeah.
If you were going to say something, you should have said, Goddess help us, if you were going to pull that on me.
You know what? I'm just going to say whatever you say the opposite of.
No, you're not.
Yes, I am.
We will now do the rest of the show with semi-fake British accents.
Emulating our heroes.
Monty Python.
Monty Python's Flying Circus.
No, it's Python.
Python.
Oh, you came here for an argument, didn't you? But this is contradiction.
This is abuse.
It
Argument.
will be later.
This is a dead parrot. No, it's not. He's just resting.
You know, I think Trump is really a kind of, he's like a human animatronic front for the people that realize if they just like kind of cut him loose, it creates this whole distraction, and a bunch of weird, even worse stuff can happen in the background. because everyone's got their attention on this guy.
You know what's fucking interesting, speaking of that, is what's going on politically with the voting restrictions. Like, what the fuck are people thinking? How can you fucking sit in an office and think, you know what, let's make this fucking harder. Let's make sure that only rich white people get to vote.
It's fear. They fear losing power. And it's so funny because they fly the stars and bars. They believe in liberty and they talk about freedom of self determination and blah, blah, blah. Except when that means someone else will have creative control over what happens. And then, no, I can't trust them. And in fact, when you really do the work, the fucking country was founded on fear that we couldn't trust people to make the right decisions. So it's been this big illusion all along.
Yeah, you know what's hella funny is I was watching one of the episodes of Warrior with Candy yesterday,
Mm.
and it's the scene where the California senators in San Francisco and the mayor's wife, like he's talking about these Chinese and blah, blah, and mayor's wife says, "Well, I wonder what the Native Americans would say about the, Europeans who came over and took their land and jobs and everything." He's like, "Well, that's why." And she had a great rebuttal. And then the mayor said, "You'll have to excuse my wife. She's prone to an argument." And the senator said, "Well, I guess I can't count on your vote if you had one." And Candy was just like, "Oh,
Yeah. So that's one of the brilliant things about that show is that it's, Bruce Lee, who was the sort of conceptual artist of that show, he wanted to talk about all of these important aspects of cultural evolution. And so it's such a great credit to Shannon Lee's power and potency and follow through and vision for her family legacy, that she made sure that the things that are getting discussed in this show are getting discussed. um, it's interesting to me that, again, violence and competition is kind of the engine that drives the entertainment group to fund it and give it space. And it's sort of the aspect of it that we like the most is actually the philosophical one. So if we come to them and said, "Hey, we want to do this philosophical show," and they said, "Well, is there kung fu in it?" It would be like that's how entertainment works right now. It's so weird.
But here's one thing I had thought of yesterday watching, because there's that huge hatchet scene, where they attack each other, the two gangs, with all the hatchets and knives and stuff. And it was super tame as far as gore and violence. You saw people kicking and flipping and stabbing and some sound effects, but visually didn't really see a lot of gore and violence. And I thought the sex is very graphic. And I thought, well, that's an interesting choice for production to emphasize the sexuality, which is love. And we're always talking about how come you can have someone's head chopped off and you get a PG-13, but if you show them making love, it's rated R. And here it seemed like a very conscious choice of we're going to tone down what you see visually with violence and up that with the act of love.
Well, and it's interesting because it's really the art of violence in this show, because there's this devotion to what martial arts are, right? And so you have the execution of an amazing physicality without necessarily the use of shock to stimulate people, right? Right? So what?
And also like the fight between the Bruce Lee character and his sister champion, and the whole Buddhist blessing at the beginning, and how the Bruce Lee character lost, and the woman who's helping nurse him back to health is saying, yeah, because the other guy had something he believed in that he was fighting for. And you saw the other guy, like when you think he's beat and he's unconscious and he suddenly comes to consciousness and he takes a deep breath and you can see him pull his chi back up. And it was like, wow, there's just so much information in there of like, here's a fight to the death in essence, and there's a spiritual aspect to what's about to happen and a respect for the wholeness of life. And
Well, violence is a part of life, and so is sex. And so sex and violence are like these primal things to us, right? And this show has taken both of them and created a level of art around them in the visual sense. The way that they're treated is with this kind of respect. And, you know, there's a kind of drugstore value in some of the gore movies that we see out there. It's like the art of violence isn't even portrayed well in them, right? But they're still the result of people being triggered to buy them, right? Because these primal things cause us to have curiosity and cause us to move towards them. There's a kind of magnetism because it reflects our own experience. And so it's crazy to me that this show is tucked away on Cinemax. Like there's like the level of work I had to do to actually get access to the show, and then you look at it and it's like, good for God's sake, Bruce Lee's been a known thing for for 4 decades. 4 decades, and this show was the rumored thing that was hidden in the vault, and the Bruce Lee show that he wrote, and like Cinemax is the best we could do. Like,
now,
where were HBO? Where was Apple TV on these?
well, it's on HBO now. So HBO bought the rights. That's why
Got
I'm
it.
watching it. But
Well,
yeah,
HBO Cinemax though.
well, HBO Plus or whatever it is,
Yeah,
HBO Max,
yeah.
but it's HBO. I mean, I don't see Cinemax. Oh, actually, now that you're saying that, I recall at the beginning there's the Cinemax.
Hello. Yeah. So, season 3 or no? Do you think it's going to happen?
I haven't finished season 2 yet,
Oh,
but
okay.
I don't know. I don't know because there was, there's a couple shows I've watched. I can see how series nowadays are definitely ending without conclusion. They definitely are planning for another season. Whether it happens or not, who knows? But
You look marvelous. So, what does Kung Fu have to do with Donald Trump?
well, I'd like to see him in a mixed martial art ring and just watch that toupee animal that he wears on top of his head go flying out of the ring like a scared monkey.
Love that. And it's important to note that in the 4 year lead up to his run for president, he had a big role in the Worldwide Wrestling Federation.
Did he?
Yes. And so the art of theater of competition
Oh yeah.
was something he immersed himself in prior to starting his political career. And it's indicative of our politics to note that we are a culture that can be run like a worldwide wrestling federation entertainment show.
And a reality show also.
Yeah. Yeah.
The conflict is what sells. Yeah.
And it's dependent on one thing, and everybody listen really closely. The thing
Except
it's
for you.
dependent on is
That's
your
yours.
unconsciousness.
What?
Because the thing it's dependent on is your unconsciousness. Because when you recognize that you're mindlessly watching something and that's useless and not even real, like reality television where people from Beverly Hills are arguing with other people from Beverly Hills about their
China.
physical capacities and their plastic surgeons, or two guys who've been paid to look like they're wrestlers wrestling, but meanwhile they've worked it all out ahead of time, right? It's like it's a shadow play. It's not really happening. And if you think that's how you want to spend your time, imagine all the amazing things you could do. Like it'd be literally better for you to go out and start an actual fight with someone than to watch wrestling, because what you would learn from actually having to fight someone would be so much more potent. Now, obviously, even it'd be better to go out and like make love with someone, but you know that's not as easy as it sounds.
Love Club. We
First
will
rule of
not
Love
talk
Club:
about Love Club.
there is no Love Club.
The Love Club. Sounds like a caveman weapon. Give me my Love Club. Didn't they like use clubs and knock out women and drag them home? And that was the marriage vows of the day.
Well, those were the memes of the middle of the 20th century that we were shown. But
Yeah.
that was just a symbolism for domination, which is the idea of perpetuating that somehow domination was the thing that had, you know, men being able to create relationships. But we all know that that's a very weak argument.
And on that note, what time is it?
10:41
Let's call it.
Pacific time. All right. Well, we hope we had a few laughs. We created some thought-provoking things for you to consider. And if you want to write us hate mail, fuck off.
Send it to markwencoaching@gmail.com.